We tend to believe that wealth is reserved for a certain kind of person, someone born into privilege, someone with the money gene, someone who always seems to make the right moves at just the right time. But that belief is not only misleading, it's one of the biggest barriers to building wealth. Wealth is not a personality. It's not about being naturally good with money or having a perfect financial track record or avoiding every mistake. Wealth is a process, a slow, deliberate, sometimes messy process, and it's one that's open to anyone willing to commit to it. This audiobook isn't about shortcuts or secrets. It's about learning to think the way the wealthy think, not with greed or arrogance, but with clarity, patience, and purpose. It's about adopting the mindset that wealth is built one decision at a time, not all at once. And it's about leading yourself even when the path is uncertain or uncomfortable. Millionaires and billionaires aren't superhuman. They've simply mastered the discipline of long-term thinking, delayed gratification, and intentional action. And those are things anyone can learn, including you. So if you've ever told yourself that financial freedom is for other people, it's time to challenge that story. Because the truth is, the habits, the thinking and the strategies of wealth aren't reserved for the elite. They're available to you right now if you're ready to take ownership. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Mindset Before Money. How the Wealthy Think Differently. Before a fortune is ever made in a bank account, it is made in the mind. That might sound like a motivational phrase, but it's one of the most important financial truths you'll ever encounter. Long-term wealth doesn't begin with luck, inheritance, or even a high-paying job. It begins with a mindset, a specific way of seeing the world, thinking about money, and making decisions. The wealthy don't just do different things. They think differently. At first glance, you might assume that rich people are simply wired for wealth. Maybe they were born with connections or trained from an early age to understand business. And yes, some start with advantages. But study after study has shown that the most lasting wealth is built, not gifted. And it's built on patterns of thought and discipline that anyone can learn. The real difference lies in how people respond to risk-time setbacks and opportunity. Wealthy people cultivate an inner operating system that prioritizes ownership, strategy, and vision over impulsive consumption. One of the core mindsets that sets the wealthy apart is the habit of thinking long-term. While many people focus on what they can afford this weekend or next month, millionaires and billionaires are planning years or decades ahead. They understand that small choices made consistently can compound into extraordinary results. This doesn't mean they never enjoy life in the present. It means they don't sacrifice their future for it. They're playing a bigger game. Imagine money like a garden. Most people focus on the fruit. How much can I pick today? The wealthy focus on the soil, the water, the roots. They're constantly tending to what will produce over time, not just what's gratifying right now. And this is where mindset plays the leading role. While others chase comfort, they chase freedom. Where others react to circumstances, they build systems to withstand them. It's a subtle but profound shift. Consider how the wealthy handle failure. Most people see failure as a reason to stop, a sign that something isn't working, that it's time to retreat. But those who build real wealth see failure as information. They treat it as a tuition payment to the school of mastery. A lost investment isn't just a setback, it's a lesson in risk. A failed business isn't the end. It's an experiment with new data. This doesn't mean they enjoy failure, but they don't fear it the same way others do, because their identity isn't tied to one outcome. Their identity is built on the process of learning and growing. Another key mindset difference is how the wealthy view responsibility. It's easy and common for people to blame the system, the economy, their upbringing, or bad luck for their financial condition. And while there's no denying that systemic inequality and life circumstances play a role, the wealthy almost universally adopt a mindset of ownership. They don't wait for rescue. They act. They ask, what can I do with what I have right now? This sense of agency fuels progress. It keeps the focus on what's possible instead of what's lacking. Wealth builders are also intensely curious. They're learners. They read, they ask questions, they listen to podcasts, they observe trends. They want to understand how money works, how businesses grow, how taxes function, how markets move. This isn't academic curiosity. It's tactical. They see knowledge as leverage. Not just college degrees or formal education, but real applicable wisdom that translates to action. And they know that every bit of insight they gain today can pay dividends for the rest of their life. Contrast this with someone who sees money as confusing or intimidating. That fear often creates avoidance. People stop reading their bank statements, ignore their debt, or postpone investing. But millionaires and billionaires develop comfort with complexity. They don't have all the answers, but they're willing to lean in, ask, and figure it out. They treat confusion as a signpost to learn, not a reason to turn back. The wealthy also separate wants from needs with precision. They know that not every desire deserves $1. This doesn't mean they live like monks. It means they are intentional. They spend with purpose. They understand that every dollar is a worker, and when deployed well, those dollars bring back friends. Whether it's investing in a business, buying property, or simply saving for the right moment, they don't let temporary pleasure hijack their long-term plans. This mental discipline extends to how they deal with comparison. While social media tempts many to spend money to appear wealthy, those building real wealth tend to move quietly. They aren't chasing image. They're chasing freedom. They understand that looking rich and being rich are often two different things. In fact, many millionaires drive older cars, wear unbranded clothes, and avoid flashy purchases, not because they can't afford them, but because they've learned to value independence over appearances. Let's not forget how the wealthy manage their time. Time is seen as the ultimate non-renewable asset. They guard it. They spend money to buy time when it makes sense. They outsource tasks that drain energy or distract from high-value thinking. They know that time, when directed well, produces far greater returns than just squeezing out a few extra dollars. This principle of using time to create value is foundational to wealth building. And it begins with a simple belief: my time is worth protecting. And perhaps one of the most powerful beliefs the wealthy share is this: money is a tool, not the goal. They don't worship wealth. They use it. They use it to create options, to help others, to invest in what matters. When money becomes a servant rather than a master, people think more clearly, act more decisively, and avoid the emotional traps that often derail progress. Fear, greed, envy, these emotions shrink when money is no longer tied to self-worth. But make no mistake, this mindset doesn't appear overnight. It's cultivated. It's built over time through habits, mentors, reflection, and action. The good news: anyone can adopt it. You don't have to be wealthy to start thinking like the wealthy. In fact, it's by thinking this way first that wealth often follows. Every dollar saved with intention, every book read with curiosity, every decision made with the future in mind, that's where transformation begins. So as you move forward, start paying attention, not just to your bank balance, but to your beliefs. Ask yourself, do I see money as a tool or a threat? Do I make decisions from fear or from vision? Do I avoid hard truths or face them with curiosity? These questions matter, because how you think determines how you act, and how you act determines what you build. The journey to lasting wealth isn't just about strategy. It's about mindset. And once that foundation is laid, everything else, from budgeting to investing to entrepreneurship, becomes more powerful, more aligned, and more sustainable. True wealth begins not in your wallet but in your thinking. Shift that, and you shift everything. This is also why wealth building isn't only about tactics, it's about who you become in the process. Many people look for the next investment opportunity, or the newest budgeting hack, hoping for a quick win. But those who sustain and grow wealth over time don't just look outward for solutions. They look inward for transformation. They realize that the most valuable asset they will ever invest in is themselves. Their habits, their discipline, their vision, their patience. These are the true drivers of long-term financial success. If you talk to someone who's built significant wealth from the ground up, you'll often hear them speak about personal growth in the same breath as money, because in their world growth is inseparable. They may start by learning how to manage a paycheck, then master saving and investing, then move on to managing people, leading teams, or building businesses. But it always begins with self-leadership. You can't expect to lead money until you can lead yourself. And that leadership shows up in small, everyday moments. It's in saying no to something you want now for something greater later. It's in sticking to a plan even when motivation dips. It's in admitting when a decision was wrong and correcting course without shame. This quiet strength, this willingness to be the builder of your own future, is what turns someone from a spender into a steward and from a dreamer into a doer. Ultimately, wealth is never an accident. It's not a glitch in the system. It's the compounded result of thousands of intentional choices rooted in a mindset that values growth, responsibility, and freedom. And once you start thinking this way, even before your bank account shows it, you've already joined the ranks of those who know what it truly means to build lasting wealth. Chapter 2. Living Below. There means frugality in the midst of fortune. The word frugal often conjures images of pinching pennies or avoiding indulgences. But when it comes to the truly wealthy, frugality takes on a far deeper and more strategic meaning. Living below one's means isn't about deprivation, it's about discipline. It's not about being cheap, it's about being intentional. And for millionaires and billionaires, this principle is one of the quiet engines behind long-term wealth. It's easy to assume that people with enormous financial resources don't need to think about spending. After all, with millions or even billions at their disposal, what's the harm in buying that luxury car, the mansion, the designer wardrobe? But the surprising truth is that many of the world's wealthiest individuals got to where they are and stayed there precisely because they resist that kind of impulse spending. They understand that wealth is not simply about how much money you make. It's about how much you keep, grow, and protect. Take Warren Buffett, one of the most famous and successful investors of all time. Despite being worth tens of billions of dollars, Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958. He's been known to drive modest cars and enjoy simple breakfasts from McDonald's. That might seem odd for someone with the ability to buy virtually anything, but it reflects a mindset rooted in value and purpose, not in image or indulgence. Frugality, when practiced by the wealthy, isn't about fear. It's about freedom. It means not being ruled by lifestyle inflation, that sneaky trap where your expenses rise in lockstep with your income. When your spending scales every time your paycheck does, you're not really building wealth, you're just upgrading your liabilities. You're running faster on a treadmill rather than walking a path that leads somewhere meaningful. Millionaires who live below their means understand this. They recognize that every dollar they don't spend is a dollar that can be invested, a dollar that can earn compound interest, a dollar that can be used for opportunity rather than consumption. It's not that they never spend, it's that they spend wisely. They distinguish between what brings true long-term value and what merely brings a short-term thrill. There's also a deep psychological component to frugality. It builds self-control. It reinforces the identity of someone who is in charge of their money, not controlled by it. When you can delay gratification, when you can choose future freedom over momentary satisfaction, you are exercising the very muscle that makes financial independence possible. And that discipline compounds in your character just as surely as your money compounds in your account. Living below your means also creates resilience. When unexpected setbacks occur, and they always do, frugal individuals are far better equipped to handle them. They have margin. They have reserves. They don't have to panic or borrow just to stay afloat. In contrast, someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, even on a high income, is one emergency away from a financial crisis. This is why so many self-made millionaires continue to budget even after they no longer need to. They don't see budgeting as restrictive. They see it as liberating. It gives them control, clarity, and the ability to make choices based on their goals rather than their impulses. And they're not afraid to say no, not to punish themselves, but to preserve their power. It's also worth noting that frugality, especially when practiced early, creates the surplus that fuels investment. If you want to build wealth, you need capital. And capital doesn't come from spending everything you earn. It comes from living on less than you make and putting the difference to work. Whether that means funding a retirement account, buying stocks, launching a side business, or purchasing rental property, every dollar you don't spend is a brick in the foundation of your future. One of the greatest myths in modern culture is that wealth is about what you can show. But the truly wealthy understand that real wealth is often invisible. It's the money quietly growing in your investment account, not the car parked in your driveway. It's the freedom to say no to a toxic job or to take time off when you need it. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you're secure, not from trying to convince others you are. Consider the contrast between someone who earns $300,000 a year, but spends $10,000, and someone who earns $75,000, but spends $55,000. The former looks rich, but is accumulating debt. The latter lives simply, but is building wealth. Over time, the second person will likely end up in a stronger financial position, not because of luck or income, but because of their consistent discipline. Frugality is also a guardrail against one of the biggest threats to long-term wealth: lifestyle inflation. As people progress in their careers and start earning more, the temptation to upgrade everything is strong: the home, the car, the vacations, the wardrobe. And while some increase in lifestyle is perfectly reasonable, doing it at the expense of savings and investment is what traps many people in the cycle of more money, same problems. Millionaires who live below their means resist this pressure. They may upgrade selectively and intentionally, but they don't do it to impress others or fill emotional voids. They do it because it fits their long-term plan. They know that buying peace of mind, time freedom, and future choices is more satisfying than chasing status. Another powerful element of this principle is that it's accessible to anyone regardless of income level. You don't have to wait until you're wealthy to start living like the wealthy do. In fact, you become wealthy by starting with this mindset. Whether you make $30,000 or $300,000, the discipline of living below your means is the same, and it's the single greatest habit that makes wealth possible over time. And here's the thing, it doesn't mean you never enjoy your money. Frugality is not about hoarding. It's about aligning your spending with your values. The wealthy spend where it matters most to them, whether that's on education, health, travel, or giving back. But they do so without sabotaging their future. They understand that saying yes to the right things often means saying no to a lot of others. That clarity creates confidence. When you know your financial priorities, it becomes easier to resist the noise. You're not pulled in every direction by advertising, social media, or comparison. You don't need to keep up with anyone because you're moving steadily toward your own goals. And that's where the true reward lies. Living below your means gives you choices. It gives you space. It gives you strength. It's not glamorous on the surface, but it's powerful beneath the surface. It's the quiet force that allows people to retire early, to take career risks, to support causes they believe in, and to live life on their terms. So if you're listening to this and wondering how to start building wealth, don't overlook this foundational truth. You don't need to win the lottery or earn six figures to change your life. You need to make the decision to live intentionally, to spend less than you earn, and to use the difference as a seed for your future. Because at the end of the day, wealth isn't built by what you buy, it's built by what you choose to keep. And the decision to live below your means is one you can make today, no matter where you start. Frugality also cultivates a rare and often undervalued quality in today's world: patience. In a culture that glorifies speed, instant results, and overnight success, the wealthy understand the value of long games. When you live below your means, you're not racing anyone, you're building. Slowly, steadily, intentionally. You're allowing time to do its compounding work while keeping your financial foundation stable. This kind of patience is a form of emotional wealth the kind that makes you immune to panic, hype, and regret. It also strengthens your identity. When you consistently make choices that align with long-term goals rather than short-term validation, you begin to see yourself as someone who leads their money, not someone who reacts to it. That identity shift creates momentum. It's no longer about depriving yourself, it's about honoring your future. And that sense of control and consistency is something even money can't buy. It has to be earned decision by decision. So if you ever feel like frugality is boring or limiting, remember this: living below your means is not a sacrifice, it's a strategy. A strategy that makes you more adaptable, more confident, and more prepared for opportunity. It's the quiet advantage that turns ordinary incomes into extraordinary futures, and it's a habit you can start practicing today, no matter your current financial situation. Chapter 3. The Power of Ownership. Why the Wealthy Invest in Assets, Not Ours. There's a quiet but profound truth behind how the wealthy grow their fortunes. They focus on ownership, not labor. While most people are taught to trade time for money, to work more hours, get promoted, and climb the corporate ladder, those who build lasting wealth know that true leverage comes not from effort alone, but from owning the things that continue to earn even when they're not working. Ownership is what separates the financially comfortable from the financially free. It's the difference between being paid once for your labor and being paid indefinitely because of something you created, built, or invested in. And for the wealthy, this distinction is not a luxury. It's a mindset, a discipline, and a strategy that informs nearly every financial decision they make. At its core, ownership means building or acquiring assets. Assets are anything that puts money in your pocket: stocks, real estate businesses, intellectual property, even digital products. Unlike a job which stops paying the moment you stop showing up, assets keep working long after you've put in the effort. They are the engines of long-term wealth, and they're available to anyone willing to shift their focus from effort to equity. Consider this: a person working a high-paying job might earn more per hour than someone who owns a small business. But if the high earner has no equity, their income ends the moment they do. Meanwhile, the business owner, even if their earnings are modest in the beginning, is building something that gains value over time and can be scaled, sold, or inherited. The difference is that one is building a paycheck, the other is building freedom. This is why wealthy individuals often think in terms of ownership early, even when they have little capital to begin with. They look for ways to turn their skills into products, their ideas into intellectual property, and their income into investments. Instead of asking, "How much can I earn this year?" they ask, "What can I own that will pay me every year?" It's a small shift in language, but a massive shift in outcome. Ownership is also a hedge against uncertainty. When you rely solely on a job for income, you're vulnerable to forces beyond your control: economic downturns, layoffs, industry disruptions. But when you have assets working for you, you have a buffer. You're not dependent on a single source of income, and you're not panicking at every fluctuation in your paycheck. That peace of mind is one of the most underrated benefits of investing in ownership. But here's the key: ownership isn't limited to those with a fortune already in hand. It begins with intention and consistency. Buying your first few shares of an index fund, starting a small online business, purchasing a rental property with a partner, these are all acts of ownership. They may seem small at first, but they compound. And more importantly, they rewire how you see yourself. You move from being a consumer of wealth to a creator of it. Take, for example, dividend stocks. When you buy a share of a company that pays regular dividends, you're not just holding a piece of paper, you're owning a slice of a real business. You're participating in its profits. And that dividend income, though small at first, grows as you reinvest and as the company thrives. The same goes for rental property. The rent check isn't just passive income. It's a signal that you own something of enduring value that others are willing to pay for. Even intellectual property like writing a book, creating a course, or developing a piece of software is a form of ownership. It's work up front that continues to pay over time. It decouples your income from your hours, which is exactly what the wealthy understand so deeply. They don't just chase income, they build income-producing machines. And ownership is not just about money, it's about control. When you own assets, you get to shape your destiny. You choose how they grow, when to sell, how to reinvest. You're not at the mercy of a boss or a company's performance review. You are, in the truest sense, your own economy. And that autonomy is deeply empowering. What's even more powerful is how ownership scales. When you trade hours for money, you hit a ceiling. There are only so many hours in a day. But when you own assets, your returns are no longer tied to your personal capacity. A portfolio can grow while you sleep. A product can sell while you're on vacation. A rental property can generate income regardless of whether you're sick, tired, or pursuing something else. This is how wealth builds in the background, quietly, efficiently, and relentlessly. It's also how legacies are created. Income disappears, but ownership can be passed on. Wealthy families don't just hand down cash, they pass along ownership of businesses, stocks, property, intellectual capital. And in doing so, they pass down stability, opportunity, and momentum. Ownership doesn't just enrich your present, it empowers your future and those who come after you. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone needs to start a business or become a landlord. Ownership takes many forms, and it should align with your skills, interests, and risk tolerance. The key is to start where you are. Begin with what you understand. Build what excites you. The important thing is that you stop trading all your energy for short-term income and start building long-term engines that can carry you forward. If you've never thought of yourself as an owner before, that's okay. It's never too late to begin. What matters is that you recognize the limitations of labor-only income and begin planting seeds that can grow independent of your daily hustle. Even small acts of ownership repeated over time can transform your financial reality. That's the power the wealthy have harnessed, and it's available to you too. Because in the end, wealth isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's about choosing leverage over labor equity, over effort, and freedom over fatigue. When you start prioritizing ownership, even in the smallest ways, you stop living paycheck to paycheck and start building a life on your own terms. That's not just financial growth, it's financial leadership. And it starts with one decision to own, not just earn. But perhaps one of the most underestimated parts of ownership is how it reshapes your identity. When you begin to see yourself not just as a worker but as a builder, not just as someone who earns, but as someone who owns everything, starts to change. You become more strategic with your time, more mindful of your resources, and more future-oriented in your decision-making. You stop asking, "How can I make it through the month?" and start asking, "How can I grow this into something lasting?" That mindset shift is incredibly powerful. It gives you agency. It helps you weather economic storms because you're no longer solely reliant on the decisions of others. You're not waiting for a raise or promotion, you're creating your own opportunities. And the more you practice ownership, the more confident you become in your ability to shape your financial destiny. It's no longer about surviving, it's about building. Even setbacks begin to look different when you operate from a place of ownership. A job loss might be devastating if your income depends entirely on a paycheck. But if you have a rental property generating passive income, or a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks, or a product that still sells while you sleep, that buffer gives you breathing room. It turns a potential crisis into a manageable challenge. And that's the true value of ownership, not just growth, but resilience. This isn't theory, it's how many first-generation millionaires quietly built their wealth. They didn't win the lottery or inherit a fortune. They bought a duplex and rented out one side. They wrote an ebook or created a course and sold it online. They invested consistently in low-cost index funds. Over time, their assets began to generate income, and then more income until eventually those assets replaced the need for earned income altogether. It didn't happen overnight, but it happened because they chose ownership over hustle. And you can make that same choice. You don't need a windfall. You don't need insider knowledge. What you need is a shift in how you see money, not as something you work for endlessly, but as something that can be put to work for you. Start with what you can. Take ownership of your time, your talent, and your capital, however limited it may feel. Every step toward ownership is a step toward freedom, and you are capable of building more than you may believe. Chapter 4. Consistency over complexity. Simple systems that build massive wealth. There's a common misconception that building significant wealth requires brilliant strategies, exotic investments, or inside knowledge only available to the elite. But when you study the financial lives of millionaires and billionaires over decades, you'll find a different story, one that centers not around complexity, but around consistency. The most enduring fortunes were not built overnight, and they weren't built through secret formulas. They were built brick by brick, day by day, with simple systems and repeatable actions. Wealth, for the vast majority of financially successful people, isn't about making perfect decisions. It's about making good decisions over and over again. So what do we mean by consistency? At its core, it's about habits. The small, often unglamorous actions taken routinely that don't make headlines but build empires. Automating contributions to retirement accounts. Sticking to a monthly budget even when income increases. Reinvesting dividends instead of cashing them out. Avoiding unnecessary upgrades. Resisting lifestyle creep. Staying the course in long-term investments even when the markets wobble. These behaviors don't grab attention, but over time they create results that seem extraordinary to outsiders and utterly ordinary to those who practice them. Consistency is the difference between someone who invests sporadically driven by emotion or market news and someone who sets a monthly amount to invest no matter what. It's the difference between someone who tries to time the market and someone who follows a long-term dollar-cost averaging plan. The former may get lucky once or twice. The latter builds reliable wealth through discipline. One of the key systems used by the wealthy is automatic saving and investing. They don't leave their wealth-building efforts up to willpower. Instead, they create a system that removes the need for daily decision-making. Whether it's directing a percentage of every paycheck into a retirement account or setting up auto-transfers to investment platforms, they take action once and then let automation take over. This simple practice harnesses the power of inertia for good. Imagine two people. One says they'll invest whenever they have extra money. The other sets up a system to invest $500 automatically on the first of each month. Fast forward 10 years, and who has likely accumulated more wealth? It's not about the market performance alone. It's about how often and how consistently that money was put to work. Another pillar of simple wealth-building systems is clear financial visibility. Wealthy individuals often track their money regularly, not because they're obsessed, but because they understand what you don't measure, you can't improve. They use basic tools, sometimes just spreadsheets, other times simple apps, to stay aware of income expenses, assets, and liabilities. Not every millionaire has a financial advisor, but every successful wealth builder has a system for awareness. The beauty of simplicity is that it's sustainable. Flashy plans that require perfect timing, constant monitoring, or emotional resilience through endless volatility often break down over time. But a straightforward habit like saving a certain percentage, keeping expenses low, avoiding bad debt, is something that can be followed through a recession, a booming economy, or a change in career. The wealthy understand that it's not the perfect plan that matters most, but the plan you can stick to when life gets messy. And here's a counterintuitive truth. Simplicity often requires more confidence than complexity. When you believe you need 1,000 moving parts to succeed, it's often coming from a place of fear or overcompensation. But when you're secure in your strategy, when you've thought it through and committed to it, you're less likely to be swayed by every new headline, every next big thing, every panic-driven market dip. Warren Buffett famously said, "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." That quote is more about consistency than it is about brilliance. Buffett built his fortune not just by being a good investor, but by being an incredibly consistent one. He held stocks for decades. He avoided fads. He reinvested earnings. He followed a simple strategy with extraordinary discipline. You'll find the same patterns repeated in the habits of lesser-known millionaires. Teachers who maxed out their 403(b)(s. Small business owners who lived frugally and reinvested profits. Couples who prioritized savings every year instead of taking lavish vacations. People who didn't chase get-rich-quick schemes but instead followed get-rich-slow ones, the ones that actually work. It's not always exciting, and that's the point. True wealth creation is often boring. It's built in the quiet moments, choosing not to upgrade the car, packing lunch more days than not reading one financial book a month, instead of binging the latest streaming hit. None of those actions alone creates wealth, but done over and over again, they form the foundation of financial independence. Consistency also builds confidence. When you see the progress, even small progress, you begin to believe that your goals are possible. A small emergency fund becomes a large one. A modest brokerage account balance grows into something you once thought was out of reach. And each time you see that growth, your belief in the system and in yourself strengthens. And when challenges inevitably arise, those simple systems become your safety net. You don't have to react to everything because you already have a plan. You don't panic when the market dips because you've seen the long-term pattern. You don't crumble under an unexpected expense because your emergency fund is in place. This is the quiet power of consistency, not just in building wealth, but in protecting peace of mind. So how do you build these systems into your life? Start small. Choose one habit. Automate your savings. Set a calendar reminder to review your finances once a week. Pick a book to deepen your financial knowledge each month. Don't aim to do everything. Aim to do one thing well and do it repeatedly. The myth that you need a complicated plan to get rich is a dangerous one. It causes people to wait until they figure it all out, while missing years of potential compounding and growth. The truth is, the sooner you start, even imperfectly, the more advantage you gain. Because consistency applied over time beats brilliance applied in bursts. This is what millionaires and billionaires understand. That success is not a single choice, it's 1,000 small ones. It's not about being flashy, it's about being faithful to the plan. It's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. Their systems may not look impressive from the outside, but they work. And they're available to you too. You don't need to be extraordinary to become wealthy. You just need to be consistent with ordinary actions. That's the secret. That's the strategy. And that's the invitation to build a life where wealth isn't a dream, but a direct result of the quiet, powerful systems you choose to follow every day. And as your consistent efforts start to take root, something else begins to grow. Your identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to get rich someday. You begin to see yourself as a builder of wealth now. This subtle internal transformation has lasting effects. Because once you believe you're the kind of person who saves, who invests, who honors a system, your decisions naturally begin to align with that identity. It's not about forcing yourself to make good choices anymore. It becomes who you are. This is one of the most powerful yet overlooked aspects of wealth building. Wealth is not just a number on a screen. It's a reflection of how you think, how you act, and what you prioritize. Consistency reinforces that identity. And identity makes consistency easier. It becomes a self-sustaining loop. Think of a tree. It doesn't shoot up overnight. It grows slowly in seasons. But underground, the roots deepen long before the branches stretch. That's what your habits are doing, building the unseen strength that supports long-term success. People may not see the early stages. You might not feel like you're making big progress, but every automated investment, every budget check-in, every month you live within your means is a ring in the trunk. And over time, you become unshakable. This is the quiet miracle of simple systems. They allow you to move forward even when life is chaotic. They protect you from your own emotions. They compound your efforts in ways that only reveal themselves over years. And they prove that wealth isn't about brilliance or luck. It's about building something that lasts by showing up again and again. Chapter 5. Strategic Risk-Taking. Playing offense, not just defense. There's a defining difference between those who slowly accumulate savings and those who build wealth that transforms generations. It's how they approach risk. While many people are focused solely on protecting what they have, avoiding loss, minimizing mistakes, staying safe, the wealthy understand that long-term financial success isn't just about playing defense. It's about knowing when and how to play offense. Strategic risk-taking is the engine that drives extraordinary outcomes. And it's not about being reckless. It's about being intentional, prepared, and bold when the time is right. The average person sees risk as something to fear. The wealthy see it as something to manage. This shift in mindset changes everything. Where one person sees danger, another sees opportunity. Where most hesitate, the strategic thinker asks better questions. What's the downside? Can I afford it? And most importantly, what's the potential upside if it works? Strategic risk-taking doesn't mean leaping without a parachute. It means knowing your landscape, calculating the odds, and stepping forward with purpose. It might be starting a business, investing in a down market, purchasing property in an emerging area, or betting on a new skill set that unlocks career growth. These decisions aren't always comfortable, but they are often the ones that shift the trajectory of a financial life. The reason the wealthy lean into risk is because they understand the cost of inaction. Playing it safe can feel smart in the short term, but it has a long-term price. Inflation eats away at idle cash. Markets rise while savings accounts stagnate. Opportunities are missed not because they were out of reach, but because the person was too afraid to try. In contrast, calculated risk opens doors. It's how empires are built, careers are elevated, and ideas become income. One of the most overlooked parts of this mindset is preparation. Strategic risk-takers don't just wake up one morning and act impulsively. They study, they plan, they gather information. They build a financial cushion that allows them to take risks without risking everything. Think of it like climbing a mountain with a safety harness. The goal isn't to never fall, it's to be prepared for the fall so you can keep climbing. That's why earlier chapters about consistency, frugality systems, and ownership matter so much. They lay the foundation. Once you have those in place, you've earned the right to take smart risks. You're not gambling, you're leveraging a stable base to reach for something bigger. It's offense rooted in defense, and that's the most powerful combination. Let's take an example. Imagine someone with a modest income who consistently lives below their means, builds an emergency fund, and maxes out their Roth IRA every year. Over time, they begin studying real estate. They decide to purchase a duplex using an FHA loan, living in one unit, and renting the other. That's a risk, but it's calculated. The downside is limited. The cash flow supports the mortgage, and the upside is long-term equity and experience as a landlord. That person isn't being reckless, they're moving forward with strategy. This kind of decision-making is at the heart of how wealth is built. It's not luck, it's not insider secrets. It's the willingness to act when others freeze, backed by thoughtful preparation. Risk without strategy is gambling, but strategy without action is stagnation. The wealthy don't just think about possibilities, they pursue them even when it's uncomfortable. And discomfort is part of the deal. Every strategic move will bring moments of doubt. That's normal. What separates the winners is that they take those feelings with them and keep moving anyway. They don't wait to feel 100% ready. They don't need perfect conditions. They act with clarity, understanding that the greatest cost is often regret for not having tried. Importantly, strategic risk-taking doesn't mean taking huge bets all the time. It can start small. It can mean investing a few $100s into a side project. It can mean negotiating a higher salary when you've been playing small. It can mean shifting your investment portfolio slightly to take on more growth potential. These aren't roll-the-dice moments, they're intentional steps toward something better. In the world of wealth-building opportunities often come disguised as uncertainty. A market dip, a job offer in a new city, a startup that hasn't yet proven itself. These are the junctures where courage meets wisdom. The question is not whether you'll face these moments. The question is whether you'll be ready when they come. And readiness isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing your values, understanding your capacity, and trusting the systems you've built. Strategic risk is never blind. It's rooted in self-knowledge. That's why the wealthy don't just study money, they study themselves. They ask, what can I handle? What am I aiming for, and what am I willing to risk to get there? When you adopt this mindset, you begin to notice possibilities everywhere. You see the apartment, you could house hack the business, you could start from your skill set. The market trends you can ride with a smart ETF strategy. You start moving forward one smart risk at a time. And over years, those decisions compound. Not just financially, but in who you become. Because here's the truth. Real wealth isn't just about what you accumulate. It's about what you're willing to pursue, create, and risk for. Playing offense means owning your future. It means stepping into the unknown with conviction, using every lesson and every tool you've earned. It means choosing growth over comfort, not once, but repeatedly. In the end, strategic risk-taking is a form of financial leadership. It's the decision to live not just with protection, but with purpose. To use money not just to feel safe, but to build something meaningful. The wealthy know that fortune favors the bold, but it rewards the prepared. And so you don't need to be reckless to grow. You just need to be ready to act when the time is right. Know the downside. Strengthen your foundation. Then step forward not with fear, but with clarity. This is also why emotional resilience is an underrated component of smart risk-taking. The truth is, many people miss out on major opportunities, not because they don't recognize them, but because they've been burned before. A failed investment, a bad business decision, a poorly timed career move, these experiences leave emotional scars. The fear of repeating pain often outweighs the logic of potential gain. But if we let fear hold the pen, we give it the power to write our entire financial story. The wealthy understand that setbacks are part of the process. They don't seek failure, but they don't flee from it either. They process the lessons, recalibrate, and move forward a little wiser, a little tougher, and a lot more intentional. It's important to point out that strategic risk-taking doesn't mean going it alone. In fact, those who manage risk well often surround themselves with counsel. They hire financial advisors, tax professionals, attorneys, and business mentors, not to make decisions for them, but to sharpen their thinking. They gather diverse perspectives, challenge assumptions, and stress test their ideas. Then, and only then, do they act. This balance of humility and courage is one of the most powerful forces in wealth creation. It says, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn, and then move. Moreover, strategic risk isn't just about money. It's about time, energy, relationships, and reputation. The wealthy understand that these are assets too, and every calculated risk draws from them. Investing in a business might mean long nights and emotional strain. Pivoting careers might mean letting go of comfort and prestige. Betting on an emerging trend might draw skepticism from peers. But when those risks are rooted in vision and backed by preparation, they become catalysts for transformation. Another truth often missed is that not taking risk is itself a risk. Playing it safe in a changing world is the fastest path to irrelevance. The economy evolves. Industries disappear. Skills become outdated. What worked 10 years ago may not work tomorrow. Those who thrive over the long haul are not the ones who found one solution and clung to it, they're the ones who kept evolving. They understood that every phase of life requires a new level of boldness. And instead of resisting change, they built the muscle to respond. Let's pause and bring this down to the ground. You don't have to be a venture capitalist or Silicon Valley entrepreneur to embrace this philosophy. Maybe your version of playing offense is reallocating your investments to include more growth. Maybe it's using your evenings to build a freelance business on the side. Maybe it's buying into your company's employee stock program or pitching a big idea to your boss. It could even be as simple as switching banks to earn a better return or refinancing your mortgage to free up capital. These are not headlines in the Wall Street Journal, but they are moves that over time build significant advantage. And this is where confidence is born, not from guarantees but from motion. The more you practice making informed strategic moves, the more skilled you become. Confidence isn't a trait. It's a byproduct of showing up for yourself repeatedly. With each action, you build not only wealth but the identity of someone who doesn't wait for life to happen, you make it happen. So if you've been sitting on the edge of a decision, hesitant, uncertain, stuck in analysis, take this chapter as your invitation. Do the work. Ask the hard questions. Prepare your foundation. But don't wait forever. The life you want won't arrive through perfection. It arrives through progress. Take the risk that aligns with your values, your goals, and your preparation, and let it stretch you into the next version of yourself, because that's the heart of it all. Strategic risk isn't about chasing fortune. It's about becoming the kind of person who can create it. Chapter 6. Giving Legacy and the Bigger Picture. Wealth with Purpose. Wealth without purpose is like a ship without a compass. It might be impressive in size and power, but if it doesn't know where it's going, it will drift endlessly. Many of the world's wealthiest individuals understand this truth deeply. They didn't just accumulate riches for the sake of status or comfort. They used their resources to create change-shaped legacies and fuel visions far larger than themselves. In this final chapter, we explore the often overlooked reason behind wealth building to create lasting impact. True wealth is not only measured by how much you have, but by how many lives you touch. Many millionaires and billionaires understand that beyond a certain point, more money doesn't mean more happiness. What brings fulfillment is often contribution, giving back, building something meaningful, leaving a legacy. This doesn't have to mean creating a massive foundation or launching global initiatives. It can be as simple as mentoring someone younger, investing in a struggling community, or creating a system that benefits generations of your family. Wealth becomes powerful when it becomes purposeful. One key lesson the wealthy embrace is that giving is not the opposite of building wealth, it's a part of it. This is a mindset shift. Many people fear that giving will subtract from their wealth. But in reality, intentional generosity often multiplies value both in financial and emotional returns. It builds trust, reputation, and goodwill. It opens doors. It fosters networks that money alone can't buy. And most importantly, it reshapes your relationship with wealth. It stops being just something you protect. It becomes something you activate. When you begin to see money not as a possession but as a tool, you start asking better questions. How can I use what I've built to serve others without losing my grip on my future? How can I support causes, people, or innovations that align with my values? These are the questions that help money evolve from being a burden to becoming a blessing. The wealthy don't always wait until the end of their lives to think about giving. Many begin building a legacy while they're still building their net worth. This often looks like establishing donor-advised funds, setting aside annual giving goals, or even creating for-profit businesses with a mission baked into the business model. They don't separate making money and making a difference, they find ways to do both. Legacy in this context isn't only about inheritance or charitable donations. It's also about identity. What do you want your name to stand for? What values do you want to pass on to your children, your community, your audience, or your employees? Wealth becomes truly transformational when it is guided by vision, not just accumulation. And that vision often starts with self-awareness. Think of wealth as a garden. You can grow as many beautiful plants as you like, but without a sense of design, purpose, or care for the ecosystem, the garden won't thrive long-term. Similarly, money without intention can look impressive, but may ultimately wither. Legacy is about planting trees whose shade you may never sit under, and doing so with joy because you know the roots run deeper than your lifetime. For many millionaires and billionaires, wealth is not something to hoard, it's something to steward. And stewardship requires discipline, patience, and values. This is why many create family financial education plans, not just trusts. They don't just want to pass down dollars. They want to pass down wisdom habits and frameworks. A legacy without leadership is a burden. A legacy with leadership becomes a multiplying force. One of the myths about legacy and philanthropy is that you need to wait until you have enough. But if you're always waiting to give or to act with purpose, that day never arrives. You build the habit of impact just like you build the habit of saving or investing by starting small and staying consistent. Whether it's allocating 1% of your income to a cause you care about or taking the time to help someone else without financial reward, the point is to shift from consumption to contribution. Many people underestimate the emotional clarity that comes from giving. It grounds you. It gives meaning to your efforts. It also provides a powerful antidote to the comparison trap. When your wealth building is about service, not status, you're no longer measuring your worth against someone else's lifestyle. You're focused on the mission, and that kind of alignment creates resilience. It's worth noting that building a meaningful legacy also includes knowing when not to give. Boundaries matter. The wealthy often learn that giving out of guilt or trying to rescue others financially can backfire. Empowerment is key. The best financial gifts are those that uplift, educate, and equip. They help others stand, not stay dependent. That's why so many legacy-minded millionaires invest in education skills, infrastructure, or opportunities, not just one-time handouts. There's also a quiet confidence in knowing that you've built something durable, something others can lean on. That's part of what fuels the emotional satisfaction of legacy. It's not just about being remembered, it's about being useful. And the wealthiest individuals often define success not by headlines or net worth statements, but by the ripple effect of their decisions over decades. It may seem distant when you're just starting to build wealth, but thinking about legacy early on can provide a compass for your financial decisions. It can help you choose between paths that are lucrative but misaligned and those that are modest but deeply fulfilling. It can help you define what enough really means, because if you don't know when you have enough, you'll never stop chasing. Wealth without direction often leads to burnout or regret. Wealth with purpose leads to sustainability and peace. That's what this final lesson is about, not just becoming wealthy, but becoming someone who uses wealth wisely. And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you consistently return to your core values, when you check your ego at the door, and when you remind yourself that no matter how much you earn, the real goal is to become a good steward. As we close, remember this. Building long-term wealth isn't only about you. It's about what you leave behind, not just in money, but in memory. The systems you create, the values you live by, the way you show up when it's hard. That's the deeper wealth. That's what turns numbers into legacy. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all: wealth is not the end goal. It's the means to a bigger life, a more generous life, a more intentional life. So build wisely, live fully, and leave something behind that outlives you. And here's something else that often goes unspoken in conversations about wealth. Purpose protects you from excess. When your financial life is rooted in something bigger than indulgence or accumulation, you're less likely to fall into the trap of lifestyle inflation. The wealthy who stay grounded tend to be those who've built a strong internal compass. They know who they are, what they stand for, and what kind of impact they want to have. That clarity becomes a shield not just from bad investments, but from poor decisions driven by ego or external validation. This is why some of the world's most successful people still live humbly, drive ordinary cars, or send their kids to public schools. It's not because they can't afford more. It's because they've redefined what enough means, and because their sense of meaning isn't attached to material display, but to mission. They're building not just for their lifetime, but for the future. Wealth with purpose also brings something you can't measure on a balance sheet: inner peace. When you know that your money is aligned with your values, it removes the cognitive dissonance that plagues so many people who feel they've compromised to get rich. You sleep better, you move through the world with more confidence, and you lead not just with strategy, but with integrity. In fact, legacy-driven wealth often becomes more anti-fragile. It adapts through generations, it adjusts to new economic landscapes, and it survives not just because of smart investments, but because of strong principles. Families and individuals who anchor their money to meaning tend to teach the next generation not just how to make money, but how to handle it, protect it, and direct it with wisdom. That transfer of mindset is more powerful than any inheritance. It's important to note that purpose-based wealth isn't reserved for billionaires or people with family offices. You don't need to be at the top of a Forbes list to live with this mindset. If anything, the earlier you adopt it, the more impactful it becomes. A person earning a modest income but giving intentionally, saving consistently, and educating their children in financial wisdom is building a legacy just as meaningful as someone with millions. Because legacy is measured not only by the size of your estate, but by the strength of your example. And in a world obsessed with hustle, scale, and constant growth, legacy thinking invites you to slow down and ask deeper questions. What am I building really? Who will benefit from it? What kind of person am I becoming in the process? These aren't just philosophical musings, they're financial decisions in disguise. Because the answers shape how you spend, save, invest, and give. So whether you're still climbing your first financial hill, or you're already in a place of surplus, don't wait to align your money with meaning. Start where you are. Clarify your values. Make intentional choices. Give generously, not just financially, but with your time, your knowledge, your leadership. That's how wealth becomes more than a number. That's how it becomes a legacy. You don't need to be born into wealth. You don't need to have a trust fund, a secret strategy, or insider access to financial systems. The truth is, building lasting wealth doesn't begin with the numbers in your bank account. It begins with how you think, how you act, and what you choose to do consistently over time. The most successful millionaires and billionaires didn't just stumble into fortune. They built it with patience, with discipline, and with vision. They made choices that aligned with their long-term goals, often sacrificing short-term comfort for future freedom. And while their net worths may vary wildly, the principles that built them are surprisingly simple. Own more than you owe, invest more than you consume, and think further ahead than most people ever will. What sets them apart isn't magic. It's mindset. It's the belief that every small step matters. Every dollar has direction. Every habit compounds into something greater. You don't need millions to get started, you just need the courage to begin, and the persistence to keep going, especially when the results don't show up right away. You have that power. You've listened, you've learned, and now you have the tools. What you do from here is what counts. You can live below your means. You can build ownership. You can automate your consistency. You can take smart risks. You can give with purpose. And you can absolutely craft a legacy that reflects who you are and what you believe. Because the goal isn't to become someone else. The goal is to become the version of you who leads your financial life with clarity, strength, and intention. That's what the wealthy do. And now so can you. Start today. Build slowly. Build wisely. And build a future that's yours to own.